recycling, cycling instead of driving, protesting for change. Despite all our efforts to help the environment, sometimes it feels like we're fighting an uphill battle. But does that mean we should stop trying? I don't think so, because even our small individual actions can make a big difference. This week, we'll meet the people working against all odds to make change where they are. I'm Sanuta Raghu. Welcome to Eco India. Let's start today's show among the forest-dwelling tribes of Gujarat. For generations, the state's forests have been their home and primary source of livelihood, yet without a legal claim of ownership. A 2006 Indian law corrected this situation, but 15 years on, many of them are still struggling to prove ownership. An organization in the Narmada district is helping them navigate the bureaucracy and substantiate their claims.
Since time immemorial, the family of Govindbhai Wasawa has lived near the Dedipada forest in Gujarat. They belong to an ancient tribal community. The forest is their livelihood and source of food. They live without reliable roads, electricity or schools. Things have changed for Govindbhai Wasawa and his family now. In the past, it was often difficult.
The forest department would harass us a lot. They came and took away seeds when we tried to cultivate the land. They would not allow us to cultivate. It was very difficult.
In the days of colonial rule, the British nationalized India's forests, transferring ownership of the land to the government. Those who lived from the forest began to be seen as encroachers in the eyes of the law. In 2006, landmark legislation known as the Forest Rights Act was finally passed in India following protests from tribal groups and activists. The law states that tribal communities, which make up 9% of India's population, have a right to live from protected land where they've lived for generations. Under the law, any individual or group from a tribal community can claim property rights over forest land if they can prove that they've been living there and cultivating the land since before 2005. But providing that proof has been difficult. As of August 2018, nearly 2 million claims had been rejected, citing lack of evidence. A huge challenge for the village councils or Gram Sabhas who make the claims on behalf of their community.
Most of the authorities, district and subdivisional authorities, insist for documentary evidence in the form of forest department receipt or something like that. In many of the places, most of the Gram Sabhas were not aware, because this act is very complicated and the tasks to be carried out by Gram Sabhas are also very complicated. And unless, because field verification is not an easy job. You go there, record everything, take statements. These things most of the people have not done here.
Amrish Mehta is a local tribal rights activist whose organization has been supporting Govindbhai and his village council as they tackle the problem of collecting evidence. They're able to produce detailed maps by overlapping satellite images and GPS data. So far, over 250 Gram Sabha councils have been trained to better understand how to employ the Forest Rights Act.
In
the past, people were too scared to approach forest department officials or speak up in front of them. When the Forest Act was passed in 2006, people here felt confident that they would be able to get some rights so that we could use our land. And with this help, we are now able to assert those rights.
27-year-old Makta Bhai Wasawa has learned how to use GPS. With the help of a GPS tracker, he can calculate exact plots of land and produce an accurate map. The GPS findings are then superimposed with satellite image data from 2005 and are used as evidence in the submission of claims.
Use of technology for verification of claims is a very controversial issue. Most of the groups are opposed to it because most of the groups feel that this would take the decision-making process away from the Gram Sabhas to somebody sitting far away in air-conditioned offices. If the communities themselves can start using this technology, they can bolster their claim, they can show that their claims are genuine, very demonstratively so, not just by that whatever they are saying, they can show it, and they can use it not only for in support of their claims, they can use it to even challenge the wrongful use of technology by the government.
And the method is clearly working. Out of the 120 individual claims submitted by the Sagai village, all have been verified and approved. The Gram Sabha of Sagai was also successful in winning community forest rights, which enabled them to collect and sell forest produce like bamboo and medicinal plants. This has opened up new sustainable ways of generating income for the community.
Since 2016, we have been selling bamboo to a paper mill. Since then, we earned around 6,000 euros for the dried bamboo. We used that money to pay 2,500 to 3,000 euros to community members for their labor.
The ripple effect of what's happening in Sagai village can already be seen in Gujarat. A state-level committee has selected this district as a pilot project for verifying the claims of the Forest Rights Act, referred to here as FRA.
The FRA, if properly implemented, is not only beneficial for tribal welfare and tribal rights, but is also beneficial for environment and forest.
Like other community projects around the world, working with the Gram Sabha Council of Sagai has shown that conservation efforts need to go hand in hand with local residents to be truly sustainable.
Storms, drought, beetle infestations and fire. Europe's forests have taken a battering in recent years. And while replanting trees has been the go-to solution for regenerating forests, some scientists say it hasn't proved sustainable. They're looking instead to other solutions to bring back the woods.
Whether beech trees, maples or aspens, Jeanette Blumröder and Pierre Ibisch are always glad to see a new member of the family arrive. About 12 months ago, the two researchers began documenting changes, big and small, to this section of a forest ravaged by fire.
We got what we hoped for. The ecosystem is starting to recover, and certain species are quickly appearing and spreading, such as these aspens. They've now brought about changes to the area that are in turn helpful for other species.
In August 2018, a forest fire razed almost 4 square kilometers of woodland outside the town of Treuenbrietzen in eastern Germany, an area larger than 500 soccer pitches. The usual practice after a forest fire is to clear the entire area and replant trees, as seen on this private land. But not in this case, thanks to a government-funded project. Here, dead trees are left standing. Local forester Dietrich Henke is testing an alternative solution, removing most of the dead pine trees and planting other species in their place. The idea is to create a mixed forest that's also home to oaks, poplars and other deciduous trees.
I first wanted to see which species of tree I could use and how old they need to be before being transplanted. Carrying out tests is important to get the full picture.
And that's where the forester brought in the expertise of these researchers. They're here to find out the best way for a forest to be able to regenerate and become more climate resistant, with or without human assistance. The researchers take a hands-off approach, limiting their work to observing which plants and animals settle in the habitat. It's a rare opportunity.
It's now standard procedure to see to it that we repair the damage that humans have done. All too frequently, we do not give nature the time or space to do that itself. And that deprives us of the chance to learn from nature.
Among the things they have learned is that in addition to providing shade, deadwood also enhances the soil when it falls to the ground. It creates more humus, which gives the soil more moisture. The work Henke has carried out on his test areas is on a smaller scale than is common in conventional forest management. They're barely accessible by car, and he's erected a fence around the forest to keep larger animals at bay. He left a number of dead trees standing. Leaves have also been spread to keep the soil moist and protect it during drought.
We're seeing large-scale forest fires in the region, and that's going to continue, so we need to learn how to respond.
And that's why researcher Jeanette Blumröder is here. She's been collecting data on soil humidity and temperature, which plants and animals settle there, and how all these factors impact on the ecosystem. 8 other research institutes are also involved in the project. The data gathered over the project's 5-year time frame is being collated at her university in Eberswalde near Berlin.
Our data shows that natural rejuvenation far exceeds the number of trees planted by humans. We've seen up to 3 times the amount of poplars naturally resettling compared to the pine or oak trees that were planted on the area.
One thing a number of studies show is that even the remains of trees killed or damaged in severe fires help the forest ecosystem rebound, which supports the argument of letting nature be.
As we've just seen, it's often better to let nature be. But it's not always possible when people are also relying on the environment for their livelihoods. Fishing and aquaculture, for example, employed almost 60 million people worldwide in 2018, according to the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization. As an island nation, it's an industry that many in the Philippines also rely on. But climate change and overfishing are having a big impact. Organizations have stepped in to help nature and the communities relying on it. Let's take a look.
I'm Colin Serranina from Pilar in the Camotes Islands. I've been fishing for a long time, for more than 25 years.
It's been raining since midnight. It's too dangerous to take the boat out.
We fishermen have observed how the weather has changed. The strong easterly winds that we see right now should have passed by now. But it's possible they'll continue until March. That's when they stopped last year. The weather no longer follows the usual pattern.
The rainy season used to end in January, and February used to be one of the driest months of the year. Climate change has changed all that. Fishermen have to be very attuned to the weather and notice every shift and deviation. Colin Serranina has 4 children. 2 have already left home. His wife Jocelyn tells us they have managed to raise a family even if food, that is fish, has sometimes been scarce.
What we get from the sea is what we eat and a source of income. We were able to send our children to school, and I'm very proud of that. My husband and I never went to school. It just wasn't possible.
Later in the morning, the weather improved. Colin Serranina soon caught 2 large fish. He'll sell the red snapper. It weighs more than 5 kilos. On a good day, he catches 15 kilos of fish. The family always keeps a portion and sells the rest to others in the neighborhood. Before the pandemic, he used to sell to a trader who supplied large markets. It was profitable, but the markets are closed for now. His neighbors can't pay those kind of prices. Jocelyn Seranyina does the bookkeeping. When they have money to spare, she deposits it with the savings club.
The savings club is like a bank for us. We don't have a bank on our island. So we came up with this, so that people can learn how to save money.
Most people in Pilar live from fishing. There's not much else to do here. The local savings club was set up 4 years ago. An official from the municipality looks after the money. The club has 400 members. The deposits currently amount to the equivalent of about 8,500 euros.
We meet once a week, and that's when our members bring their money. Some deposit 20 pesos, others 40, a few even 50.
20 pesos is a third of a euro. It'll buy you a bottle of water, and that's all some people can put aside after a week's work. They would probably have even less were it not for efforts to protect the island's coastal waters from overfishing. In 2005, marine protected areas were established where no fishing is allowed and the fish can breed in peace. In Pilar, volunteers patrol the coast around the clock. This is their guard post.
These protected areas have made a big difference. Fish stocks were dwindling here, but since 2005, they've been increasing. I think these areas have really improved the situation for the fishermen.
The German Environment Ministry's International Climate Initiative is supporting the fishing community's efforts to help themselves. Suzanne Catalio heads the municipality's disaster relief unit. She helped set up the protected area.
In Pilar, we experienced so many changes that maybe that's caused by climate change, like the sea level rise, extreme heat, long drought, and heavy rainfall, and the frequent occurrence of storms.
It's evening, and the Seranyina family are preparing supper. On the menu, fish of course, with lemongrass, tomatoes, and chili and rice.
I boil some water. Then I add the vegetables, and then the fish. I let it cook for a while, but I don't let it cook too long.
The two daughters who still live at home have been studying climate change at school. They understand how it's affecting life here.
It's a big problem for my father. It makes me really sad. It's so hot out there on the water, and then he might not even catch a single fish. I feel sorry for him. He works really hard, but still sometimes comes home empty-handed.
The Seranyinas can only hope for good weather and calm seas. Life is tough and getting tougher on the Camotes.
The COVID-19 pandemic has been devastating for people and industries all over the world. In India too, it's created a dire situation for farmers who've seen a decrease in demand and in some cases have been unable to access their land. But in Medak district, a community organization established to share information and solidarity with the changing environment has become a lifeline.
The sorghum core are standing tall. In a few weeks, Mogulama can start harvesting. For the crops to remain healthy, she needs to ensure the weeds are removed frequently. 4 years ago, she took on a lease for nearly 5 acres of fertile land, thanks to help from a local initiative.
I was growing 15 to 25 varieties. I felt good and decided to stick to agriculture so my children could go to school. My daughter did teacher training and my son studied till he was 15. So I'm taking care of my kids.
Unlike many across the world, she has remained unfazed by the pandemic. Even the historic flood last October that flattened thousands of acres of farmland in Telangana state could not deter her. Over the last 7 years, she has been growing traditional millet, and it served her well.
Only those who abandoned food crops and grew something else ended up with losses. We didn't lose out at all. Those who grew cotton and sold it all at once ended up with nothing to eat. But we had no such problems.
Women like Magulama have traditionally been marginalized, both as women and because of their caste. But Magulama has managed to break out of the mold. She decides the crops she grows and even owns the land she tills, a departure from India's social norms. It is largely thanks to the Deccan Development Society, a larger movement of which Magulama is part. The grassroots organization set up in the mid-1980s encourages women to form sangams or groups for organic community farming. Financial support comes from international funding agencies and the government. The women here only grow dryland crops which are not affected by climate change, as one of the society's founders explains. And that is not all.
Number 2, we are growing crops which do not take away the strength from the soil. And thirdly, the heavy threat of malnutrition does not affect us because our crops are highly nutritious crops, all of them being millets. And therefore, they are there, they are affordable, people can buy them.
Traditional seed varieties are key in achieving food security and autonomy. 65-year-old Chandrama is in charge of a community seed bank at Pidakani village. She carefully sieves the seeds to remove stones before putting them in long-term storage. In the past, the women were treated as untouchable, but today they have better social standing because they have grown stronger through the organization. These historically marginalized Dalit women also run a community radio station. In the pandemic, it has become an important channel for raising awareness and spreading information. Narasama, or General Narasama as she is known, presents and produces the daily program, which also reports on traditional farming practices. She has many listeners.
We use the radio to educate the younger ones on different crops, how to sow food crops and save seeds. We interview older people and broadcast it to educate the younger generation.
Magulama and the other women of Sangareddy district didn't starve when the markets were closed during the lockdown. Instead, they were able to help others.
We all had food in our homes. So from each village, we collected grains, packed and distributed them. And we were able to give a nutritious millet drink to pregnant women and new mothers in each village.
Inspired by how the women have weathered the crisis, other farmers in the region have now begun to follow their lead.
Among the 70 villages, currently half of the farmers are doing organic farming like we do and are part of the community. Previously, only a quarter of the farmers belonged to the community. But slowly the numbers started increasing. Post-lockdown, more than half of the farmers turned to organic farming. And they're all growing traditional food crops.
Nearly 4 decades after the movement first began, members are now traveling from village to village to spread the message. The society has helped them to grow strong and develop farming practices that are both organic and resistant to climate change.
It takes gumption to be the first mover, to bring about change. I hope today's episode inspired you to be that change you want to see in the world, to take your first step towards a cleaner, greener planet. I'll see you again next week with many more thought-provoking stories from our entire team in India and Germany. Goodbye.